Hello and welcome back. First of all, thank you to all of the new subscribers that have joined us in the last week or so. Super cool to see that this is getting out there and folks are watching and hopefully getting something out of it. If you haven't already subscribed and you're seeing this video, I would greatly appreciate if you would hit that subscribe button. And if you're willing to put a like and a share on a video, that really helps because YouTube will read that and see that people are liking the content and they'll spread it out to others. And my whole mission here is to try to create a free resource for everybody to kind of come together and have a sense of purpose in part of their day while they're socially distancing and to be creative, and hopefully people find it as cathartic and therapeutic as I do. So I did get a couple of requests for some topics to cover, and I already had something slotted for the first half of today. So the first half of what I'm going to do today is talk about focal length. But then the second half of today, I'm going to show and talk a little bit about keywording. And for that, we're going to do something a little different. I'm going to actually show how I work on my computer after the photos are taken. So we'll jump into Lightroom and I'll show you a little bit about what keywording is, why it's so valuable, and so forth. So first of all, focal length. So lenses basically cover a huge range of focal lengths, and the lower the number of your focal length, the more wide angle it gets and the bigger view that it gets. So if your goal as a photographer is to do landscape photography and you want those big sweeping vistas or those huge areas, then you may be most interested in getting a wide angle lens. So you have some choices. Well, you have a ton of choices. The first choice that you want to think about is whether you want to do a prime lens or a zoom lens. So a prime lens has only one focal length. It is just a set length. So you could have a 20mm lens or a 16 or a 24 or a 35 or a 50, but it doesn't zoom. It doesn't cover a range. A zoom lens, one of the most popular in that wide angle category, is a 16 to 35mm lens. That's one of the mainstay zoom lenses that a lot of photographers use. So 50mm, I mentioned the other day, that's kind of the range where people consider it neither wide angle nor telephoto. It's just kind of right in the middle. So that 50mm range, if you're looking at a 16 to 35, all of that is wide angle. The next one that folks get in the zoom category is often a 24 to 70. So a 24 to 70 is slightly wide angle at the 24 end, and it's a slight zoom at the 70 end, but it basically is hovering right around that 50mm point. So it's not a big amount of wide angle and not a big amount of zoom, but just a little bit of each. Gives you a little bit of movement. And then the other one, that's actually the one that I have mounted here, is a 70 to 200. And so that's going to go from just slightly zooming to zooming quite a bit. And by zooming, it's kind of like a misnomer. It's actually, we're talking about telephoto pull. But at a 200mm focal length, you're actually pulling in quite a bit. It's really handy for some sports. You're pulling in from, like, you're on a sideline taking photos in a basketball court or at a gym or wherever, and it pulls the athlete up to you. So that's a really helpful thing. It's a great range for portraits too. You can stand far enough away from your subjects that you're not like right up in their face. And it works really nicely. A lot of wedding photographers and event photographers really rely on their 70 to 200s. So if you like photographing people and you're not really comfortable getting right up on them, the 70 to 200 could be a really great lens to consider. Then we got even to the longer focal lengths, and here's where you start looking at lenses that are great for, in some cases, sports, but definitely for birding, wildlife, anything where you're trying to kind of, almost like the paparazzi thing, where you're really far away and you're pulling something from far away right in. One of the popular ones for that is the 100 to 400. There's also, depending on the brand, there's a 150 to 600 or a 200 to 500 or a 200 to 600 across some of the different brands. All of those get you into that range. When you're 400 to 600 millimeters, you're pulling in quite a bit. You're zooming in a lot. I use 100 to 400 a lot for birds. I also use that lens a lot for surf photography, where I'm trying to pull the surfers who are out into the ocean quite a ways, and I want to pull them in. Depending on the sport that I'm shooting, usually I'm more using the 70 to 200, but sometimes I'll pull out the 100 to 400 as well. It just kind of depends on how far away I am and how much I want to zoom in on the subject that I'm photographing. So really at this point of the discussion, it would be more if one-on-one advice if you have a specific goal in mind for your photography and you want some help picking a lens or some pointers towards some lenses. Shoot me a message, send me an email or a message on Facebook or Instagram, or you can just comment on this video, and I'll be happy to try to figure out what your goal is and what might be some options for that. As a general rule, you kind of get what you pay for in terms of lenses. Good lenses are always going to cost a pretty decent chunk of money. There are off brands, that's a skewed way of saying it. That's not what I mean. But you have the Tamron and Sigma, and there are lens companies that make phenomenal lenses that are not the camera brands. Sony, Canon, Nikon, Fuji, and whatnot. Their lenses are very good. Maybe 15, 20 years ago, you were looking at pretty much a second-rate lens for cheaper. Now, in many cases, the lens is every bit as good. So I would highly recommend that you consider all the options when you're looking at lenses. One of the bits of advice I would also offer up is make sure that you are shooting lenses before you buy them if you possibly can. There is, online, there are a couple of different rental options, or if you have a local camera store, if you just go to them and say, like, I'm really interested in this lens, could I use it for a chunk of time and evaluate it and see if it's something that I want? Local camera stores are your resource for that. Make sure to talk to them and to get set up. A lot of times also, stores will have events with the companies that are selling their product there. For example, Tamron hosts an event at Conowingo Dam through Cardinal Camera pretty much I think they do it every year. I think it's in November. And everybody goes down and shoots the eagles, but they get to use Tamron's lenses and check them out. And there's some really neat options there. Likewise, Sony will come in and do events in the store, and you can go, and that's actually when I switched to Sony. I went to one of those events and got some of the equipment into my hands and realized it was time. It was time for me to switch. So take advantage of those resources. They're awesome, and the guys are always really knowledgeable, and they'll help you. So the second thing that we're going to talk about is keywording. And so the idea of keywording is that when you import your photos, you assign keywords to them, and then it becomes a huge resource down the road after you've done it for a while in finding your images. And for that, we're going to jump over into Lightroom. So I will see you over there in just a second. Okay, so now I'm over here in Lightroom, and on the left-hand side, we have all of my different shoots that I've done in the last couple months. And you can see over on the right-hand side, where I'm circling right now, the keywords that are associated with the photo that I have in my screen right here. So when you're importing, if you go to your import screen, so if you go to File, Import Photos and Videos, and that opens up, you can see here that on the right-hand side, one of your options is to include some keywords. So it's a little bit tricky when you import your shoot. I try to put the keywords in there that are going to apply to all of the photos from the shoot. So if I'm photographing the Jones family, I would say the Jones family portraits, or if I was photographing the French consulate piano recital, I would say that, or whatever, and I'd make up some keywords that would fit the entire gallery. I try not to include keywords that are going to apply only to specific images within the gallery, because I'm going to go in and put them in later. But I do use this to do my global keywords I guess would be the best way to explain it. All right, so I'm going to cancel out of this because I'm not importing any new photos, but if I were, right here is where I would import them with keywords. So these are already imported, and so I have created a smart collection. And if you don't know about collections, this might be something you want to ignore for the time being, but if you create a smart collection, and I can actually show you how to do that here. You go to the Create and then Smart Collection. That is going to have a set of rules. And so one of the options for all these different rules that you can select would be to have keywords, and then I have selected are empty. And then I keep that smart. Now I actually just recreated another one, and I didn't need to because I already have this made. So I'm going to delete that out of there so it's not there. But I have it, and it's entitled Keyworded. All right, and what this is any photo that I have that is not keyworded will show up in this gallery. So I don't have a single photo on this library that is not keyworded. So if I go back up here to my All Photographs one, and that is, right now I only have about 3667 on this whole drive, so it's really small right now. But every single image, as I click through the image, you'll see keywords over here that are related to that image. Now, the real beauty of this is not at first. It doesn't come when you first start using keywords. It comes a couple of years later. Because if you keyword well, for example, if I go, and right now I have selected all of my photographs, and I hit Find, it'll pull up in here under this text, and I'm searching in my keywords, and, well, Arena is the last one that I searched for. So this is a new assistant conductor with the Philadelphia Orchestra, and she contacted me asking for some photos of herself for her website. When she contacted me, I typed in her name and hit Enter, and it pulled up 95 photos of her from shooting for the Philadelphia Orchestra. And every single one of these images, and I can make it easier to see them, every single one of them has her in it. Now if I find one where she isn't in the photo, it means that now this one, she's here, but she's really not the focal point at all. So I can go in here and I can just take out that keyword, and once I do that, it takes it out of this search. So all of a sudden it just disappears on me. It's still in there in Lightroom, but it's not in the selection of photos that I'm looking at right now. And so you can see as I go through every single image, it takes them a little bit to load in there fully, but once they've loaded in, those are the photos of Arena. So if I wanted to do another search, I could go up and I could just search for whatever, flowers. All right, so I could type in flower, and here's photos of flowers. And I guess some of my terms are not exactly right, because some of these are actually more leaves and plants and whatnot, but I like to call them flowers. So that actually brings up another topic about picking your keywords carefully. One of the things you want to watch out for is that you decide whether you're going to use singular or plural for things like flower, or dog and dogs, bird and birds, stuff like that. Whichever you choose is fine, but you want to pick one when you first start keywording your stuff, and then stick to it. So I'm using singular, so if I'm entering in keywords, I'll put it in there in a singular form so that it becomes more useful. Because the computer is just searching characters and it doesn't understand the meaning behind flower and flowers, it won't dish up the flowers with the plural if I'm doing singular. And just out of curiosity, I'll put my S on there, and yep, good for me, no plural. All right, so that does that. It's really, really important to keyword well if you want, after you have, now this, like I said, this drive only has 3,600 photos on it. By the time that's 36,000 or 100,000, having your photos keyworded is precious, because you won't remember when you shot a particular thing You'll get an email from somebody saying, I want a photo from this event or that or the other. And if you can find it using keywords, it's going to be awesome. Another aspect of this that you can use is, oh, and I haven't turned it on this catalog, but it's this little face right down here is for facial recognition. And facial recognition actually adds the keyword in there too, but it also connects it to a specific face so that you can identify people that way. It will build up recognizability of people to an extent. The facial recognition in here is not as sophisticated as what they're using on Facebook or Instagram or any of those. So it does make mistakes. It always gives you a little opportunity. You have a little checkbox to mark yes or no, this is correct. And it will get them wrong and you'll have to fix some. But it, again, can be very, very handy. All right, that's about it for today. I hope this helped out. If anybody has any further questions or you want more information on keywording, just toss me a message. I'll be happy to help. And if anybody has topics for future articles or episodes or whatnot, also just send those along and I will get to them as quickly as I can. Thank you very much and have a great day.